Monkey, will you get the fuck out of here?
Why are you so mean to your cats?
Because they're in the way.
What are they in the way of?
The film. Look at him. Look at him. He's right in the shot. He's in the fucking background of the shot. Oh, da.
You got your thing right over your shoulder? I got mine right over my shoulder. It's symmetry. Speaking of which, do you want a drink?
I thought you were going to say symmetry because there was two houses that had like an opposite like floor plan on the other ends of a lake in the movie Night House.
What the fuck are you talking about?
I'm talking about the new hit film, The Night House, which is not the same as The Lighthouse. Neither of those are the right house. In fact, they're both the wrong house.
You were right. You were right. There's nothing. There is nothing. You're safe now. Safe from what?
You know, that joke sounds so funny. It's almost as if we came up with that driving on the way home from here, and you saved it in your mind until this specific moment to share it with the internet.
You never just come up with a funny joke in the car and then think, I gotta fucking remember that for when I get home. I gotta remember that for when I get home. I gotta remember that.
Yes.
So I can put it in the video.
But I forget it immediately after I think that.
And that's why you have less subscribers.
Fuck yeah! So, Xavier.
Yeah.
We saw a movie. Did
Yes.
we not?
We saw a movie,
What was it called?
The Night House, which,
And this time I chose the movie instead of you, which means that it's good.
yeah. This was an interesting experience because I didn't see the trailer for this. I didn't know what the poster looked like. I didn't know who was in it. I forgot the title, even though you told it to me 3 times over the past couple of days.
It is a generic title, to be honest.
I
Stay off the table, Stimpy.
just let him. It'll be funny. It'll be video goofs.
So, as you may or may not notice, between our 2 channels, we have recently, or will soon, release a review of the Hellraiser movies. Now, as part of that review, we mention that there is a movie that may or may not come out that they're developing based on a reboot of the series.
Yes.
That movie that may or may not come out, it will be directed, most probably, by the director of this movie, who is a man called David Bruckner, and written by the same writers who wrote this movie.
So anyway...
So we thought we would watch this movie to get a little bit of a taste for the craft of this movie and these filmmakers, and be like, these are the hands, one of the hands, a series of hands, a lot of hands in this pot, that will very
potentially touch all the pins
potentially
on Pinhead's head.
Personally insert every single pin into Pinhead's pinhead head.
They'll just... Yeah, like that.
And that's exactly the sounds that Doug Bradley will make, because it's been a long time since he's been in the costume, so he's going to have to get used to it.
That's the noise that Pinhead canonically made when they put the pins in. Is there a clip of that?
Yes!
Oh, damn.
It's from the beginning of Hellraiser 2. Are you telling me that you haven't memorized every single scene of the Hellraiser movies? You call yourself a Hellraiser fan?
There's 2 really good movies, and then...
And this is from one of the good ones!
And, well, hold on. We watched the bad ones more recently, so all of that shit is more embedded in my brain. So anyway, The Night House.
It stars Rebecca Hall of...
She was in Godzilla vs. Kong.
Of Godzilla vs. Kong fame. She is in this, it's her sort of star vehicle, There's a lot of sort of indie movies lately like this where they hire one moderately famous person to sell the movie, and then it's sort of it's an exercise in them getting to stretch their acting muscles that they might not on something like Godzilla vs. Kong.
Yeah.
And she is the widow of an architect who lives in a custom-built home on a lake.
It's right there. See, look, see.
Yeah, right there in upstate New York.
In upstate New York. Well, I'm from Utica, and I've never heard of the night house.
Oh, not in Utica. No, it's an Albany expression.
I see.
Is it bad that when she went to Utica,
I thought of that too. Did you hear me giggle a little bit in the theater?
I didn't.
I was thinking of steamed hams. As soon as she drove past the fucking Utica thing, I went, well, I'm from Utica, and I've never heard that expression.
And she most recently, and then her husband committed suicide very recently, and he just went out on their boat because they're on a lake, and he shot himself in the head.
I want to know why my son got it.
My husband shot himself in the head last Thursday.
I hadn't heard.
No, because it's a personal matter. So yeah. Yeah. If you want to know. He took the boat out on the lake. He took a handgun that I didn't even know that we owned, and pow, right in the mouth.
And left a very confusing suicide note that could be interpreted many different ways.
Mm-hmm. And she interprets it one way, which turns out to be wrong.
You were right. There is nothing. Nothing is after you. You're safe now.
And then spooky things start happening.
And she starts hearing voices, and
the house
hallucinating.
The house has shapes. Why is there a shark on the beach?
And the house starts being freaky and creepy around her. And then it's one of those movies. It's one of the slow descent into madness movies where
it gets creepier as it goes on, and you start seeing weirder and weirder stuff. It's a good slow burn. I was never bored. Throughout
this story, she invests. It's mostly a character piece in the sense that it concentrates on her emotions and her experiences as she deals with her husband's death. But it's also
kind of like a mystery too, as she's like following little clues and hints,
investigating what her husband really was, why he built the house, the secrets of that, and that also have to do with her own traumatic past.
Yeah, what I like about it is that the supernatural element isn't played for ambiguity. It actually is physically moving her from kind of point to point in the story, but it also is not like the main focus of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Is like she has these dreams where she like sees little hints about things that she didn't know about before, and then as she wakes up the next morning, she starts like investigating threads based on whatever those dreams were.
Yeah, and it's somewhat. It's sort of a day, like, it takes place over the course of, like, 5 days or something.
Yeah.
And it deals with, in the daytime, there's reality, we see her friends, we deal with, like, emotions and drama, and then at night, things start getting screwy, and we get into her dreams.
As each night progresses over the course of the 5 days,
it gets weirder and weirder.
The animatronics become more and more active.
Hence, the Night House.
The Night House.
And
the 5 Nights at House.
Except that it's a bit more cleverly executed than something like those
Five
other
Nights at
stories
Owens?
mentioned are, because the way that the reality and the trippy stuff blend together is more artfully done. And it
Some really cool visuals in this movie.
yes.
There's a
So
lot
it's
of
a very subtle movie for most of it. There's not a lot of... Okay, so before the movie, we saw the trailer for Malignant, which is kind of the exact opposite of this movie.
that was in the trailer. You see a big black ghost monster shadow guy stabbing people.
And there's
in the
like
head.
CGI, like melting
And
environments,
the
red
walls
lights.
are exploding, and there's like there's a guy who looks like Venom or something running around just like grabbing people, and it looks like a superhero movie. I said that looks more actiony than like a horror movie.
But then,
as we were watching it,
but this movie, it does a lot of similar stuff, like playing with like fluid reality and surreal environments, but it does so in a very subtle way. It's like you're looking at the corner of a table or at the corner of a post in the wall.
Yeah.
And then you see a face, and then it turns at you. And it's so well executed.
There's a lot of really great, cool perspective shots where you're seeing like what looks like the shape of a person.
And because it's like a custom designed
the
home,
architecture.
I'm imagining you could just build this set somewhere.
Yeah.
Just bespoke to be like really well, and you could shoot the hell out of this. That's I think one of the cool things is that this movie really uses its environments well to do a lot of environmental storytelling.
Yeah.
And a lot of creative and very, very subtle scares.
Now, we talked about this a little bit, is in the car ride home, is the movie does a lot of very subtle foreshadowing about the kind of scares and set pieces very early on that it was going to do. And there was one that it hinted at that they never got around to, was as she's going through her late husband's stuff in like the first act, she finds the blueprints of the house and then a reverse of the blueprints, and then she also finds this book of what looks to be like mazes and drawings that are like non-Euclidean geometry, like impossible space, hallways that don't technically have entrances or exits, but they're mazes.
So we can't. I think that any more discussion of the plot beyond that is really beside the point, because it's not necessarily. It's not a strong.
Well, let me
plot
finish
movie.
my point. That I was
okay.
making. So anyway, we see a lot of mazes and
drawings, and blah blah blah.
And I felt like at some point they were going to have a scene where she was wandering around in a maze that had some kind of crazy, impossible like geometry with
and
the
at
walls.
the end of the movie, they were starting on that.
They got super close and then didn't fully commit to it, and I was a little let down because I felt like that would have been my most memorable set piece in the whole thing.
My theory is that they didn't have the budget for this.
Fair,
because
yeah.
it's an indie movie.
It might have got cut at the last
And
second. You were theorizing.
It's either that they shot a sequence and they cut it for pacing, or they were intending to film a sequence, but as they were shooting it, they realized they didn't have the money for it.
Yeah.
It's one of those two things, possibly. That's if we're assuming that there was ever going to be a sequence like that.
Did you seriously not know? Anything was wrong?
Gary, Jesus, you guys.
No, I don't mind. No, I didn't know. I'm the one who struggled with that stuff. Depression, dark thoughts. He's the one that kept them at bay. Maybe it got to him. I don't know. Maybe I infected him with my bullshit.
No, it doesn't work like that.
No?
But as I was saying earlier, it's really focused in on character. And it's all about this woman struggling with
grief and discovery.
And the way that living in
discovery.
Living in the way it's also because it's about these houses. She discovers that there's like another version of her house on the other side of the lake that just hid certain uncomfortable secrets about her husband. And it's about the way that environments and places shape who we are and the way that we live, and also the way that we connect places with people and personalities and actions.
You holding up?
Yeah, I'm fine. Just didn't really sleep well last night.
Can't believe you slept at all, especially there.
So at the end, so do you want to talk about the nothing part of it?
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
So the reveal at the end of the movie is that there's this suicide note that her husband left. She said,
You were right. There is nothing. Nothing is after you. You're safe now. He told me I was right.
But it turns out it shouldn't be read as there is nothing after you. It is there is nothing after you. Trying to sort of tell her, hey, you're safe. There's nothing chasing you, trying to get you. In denial about it.
And the big reveal is that...
So the main character says that, like, a long time ago she had a near-death experience.
You know, I died back in Tennessee. Did I tell you that story? 17, high school. Friend was driving, and we flipped over the side of a mountain. Pancaked. Lungs were crushed. They had to airlift me out. Heart stopped. Whole deal. 4 minutes.
Oh my God.
Afterward, when everyone would ask me when they found out, like, what was it like? What did you see? And I didn't want to disappoint them, so I'd say, I don't know, I don't remember. But I remember Owen was the only person I ever told. There's nothing.
What do you mean? Nothing.
I wish I could tell you something. Light at the end of the tunnel. There's just tunnel.
She remembers seeing nothing, but it turns out she saw something. Some kind of personification of evil.
Demonic
or
entity.
Some kind of demon or a ghost. And it remembers her. So it latches on...
Lovecraftian entity.
Maybe, even. That would be fucking cool. And it never really explains what it is, but something evil sees her during this near-death experience.
Became enamored with her.
And it attaches itself to her husband. Our assumption was because he was more of a believer of the afterlife.
She's established as a skeptic with dialogue with other characters. So even if this force makes a presence in your life, then this character who's skeptical about that things would just write it off and not pay attention, maybe.
But her husband was a believer, so it was easier to get into his head. And over time, it forced him to... It was trying to force him to kill her because it wanted her back after that near-death experience.
And that was what he called as unnatural urges, is that he felt. So then what he was doing throughout his life was that he would bring other women who looked like her to the reverse image of their house.
And then kill them there to satisfy this beast in his head. Temporarily.
And then eventually he realized that this wasn't working after he tried killing this one girl but couldn't do it. And then he kills himself. And then now that...
And his assumption is that once he does it, it would maybe save her, and that maybe this thing in his head is specific to him.
Yeah.
But as we follow along with the movie, that just lets it back out, and it starts directly grabbing her.
Throughout the movie, she's been hearing this voice through the...
she thinks it's her husband's voice, until it just flat out says it's not him.
It was me the whole time. And then, at the end of the movie, she's sort of taken up by this being, and, like, it tries to convince her to kill herself.
Like, reenact her husband's suicide.
Yeah, and join it, because that's what it really wants, is her. And then she is convinced by a friend who reaches her just in time to be like, no, don't commit suicide! Suicide is bad!
So the movie is basically just kind of about depression and grief. The monster is just...
It's nothing.
Well, it's mental illness.
But it's also literally nothing.
But it's also literally nothing.
As in the sort of... the voice of nothingness inside your head.
Yeah. And so... friends and people who care about her reach out to her and pull her out of the nothing.
So, I was thinking about this with this movie because I've known about this movie for at least a year and a half now.
Yeah.
And it's sort of one of the... in the current landscape of American horror, there's basically two big subgenres. There's...
torture porn and ghosts.
James Wan...
Ghosts!
If you'll allow me to finish. James Wan, like, Halloween, roller coaster rides that are just like, oh, people are getting killed. It's like a roller coaster ride.
It's a spectacle. Like, I saw the most recent Conjuring, and it flat out has a witch who possesses people with, like, magic spells and forces them to commit murder long distance.
Oh, boy.
And she has, like, telekinetic powers, and she's almost like a supervillain. There's a human antagonist in the most recent Conjuring movie.
That is...
And they fight her in a tomb with an axe.
And there's that sort of PG-13 sort of horror for all ages, big commercial stuff.
Yeah.
And then there's indie horror.
There's the
stuff
Suspirias.
Stuff like the Suspiria remake. Stuff like Midsummer and what's the... Hereditary.
Right,
yeah. Stuff
the
like...
weird stuff.
The Vivitch.
The artsy crap.
I was worried that it would become a lot like the worst tendencies of the artsy-fartsy crowd, which is a problem that I call they're...
Being too up its own ass.
No. They're too concentrated on what their horror movie is a metaphor for.
Oh, you mean like Wounds. Remember Wounds?
Then...
That movie is about a failing relationship. And nothing else. It drags on so long, and it's like, we get it. Yes, they want to break up. Yes, we get it. He's an asshole and he has a drinking problem. We get it.
And which means that it forgets to be
a scary movie on top of it.
With its own internal logic and with its own literal stuff. So this movie, I'm glad to say, as Xavier was saying earlier, it doesn't quite do that quite as much.
No, actually.
It
because the actual ghost stuff is enticing and fun and spooky and interesting.
It does lean a little bit more on the side of the artsy-fartsy metaphor crowd, but it doesn't do so in a way
that's like self-indulgent.
Compromises the movie's storytelling.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this as well during the movie. It's shot very naturalistically. It's shot like as if it were a slice of life drama.
Yeah,
And-
there's not a lot of crazy horror movie lighting.
And part of it is the whole intentional decisions to make it subtle, to make the jump scares and the visual scares really subtle. But the other
This was
part...
a really good implementation of jump scares, by the way.
Absolutely. But the other side of it is that, especially in low-budget filmmaking, digital cinematography has won out over film.
Yeah.
And whenever you watch the classic 70s, 80s horror movies, they're all shot on film.
Which
and
it
that
lends
lends-
it like a kind of classiness, even if the movie itself
And it
isn't very
also
classy.
lends its own... It lends it its own sense of reality. And I'm just thinking about how you can't quite do a lot of the... You can't create the same type of world you can in an 80s horror movie today simply because you're using digital cinematography instead of film.
It just looks too clean.
It looks too real.
It looks too pre-prepared. It just doesn't have the same kind of grit
and grime. And with this kind of movie, it embraces the fact that you can't do that in the same way that you used to be able to, and you have to do that in a new way.
Yeah.
And I'm very curious to see how they do that in something like the Hellraiser reboot, because in the Halloween reboot, they just do that. They bridge that problem by just shooting it like they'd shoot a superhero movie.
Evil dies tonight!
If you kids are watching this video, you need to watch a 1980s movie that is fucking rad. It is called Dolls. It's directed by Stuart Gordon. And it is the better version of all of the Annabelle movies because the killer haunted dolls in that movie are just fucking dolls.
They don't look like the most haunted thing ever.
They look like old-timey, old-fashioned dolls.
I've
from, like, the
always loved the
19th
Annabelle
century.
design. Because in real life, it's just a Raggedy Ann doll. But in the movie, they're like, well, it has to be scary. So it's the most, like, visually sinister-looking piece of...
There, she fits right in.
ever constructed by human hands. You look at that and go, yeah, that's evil. Like, no child would ever play with that.
But then the dolls are like...
They just look like dolls!
They're old-fashioned dolls, obviously.
Yeah.
Because the story of the movie is that there's the old people who make dolls. But they look like normal old-timey dolls. So when they come alive and start killing people, it is legitimately uncomfortable because you're like, oh no, they shouldn't be doing this, these little dolls.
Alternatively, turn on Child's Play 2019, and then gouge your own eyes out, and then take it out of the DVD player and snap it in half.
You are my body.
Until the end, more than a buddy, you're my best friend.
My only body.
Andy, I'm a hip new electronic toy. Everyone wants one of me.
Andy,
I'm
I
your
sound like
buddy.
the Joker.
I sound like the fucking Joker. Hi, Andy. I sound like the fucking Joker. But I'm supposed to be a hip new fun toy that all the kids want to play with. Why would you make an iPod that looks like a small man with an elderly face and ginger hair?
That
with
sounds
the voice,
like the Joker.
The voice that sounds like the Joker. What child would be like, yeah, I want that to connect to my fucking Bluetooth?
Is that really you?
So if we're going to return to the topic we mentioned at the beginning of this, which is, what are we to look forward to if these people are to do a Hellraiser movie? And I
Some
think
great
that
visuals. It's going to look great.
if they manage to keep some consistency with this movie, I do think that
It'll have strong characters.
I think that the one difference is that the Hellraiser movies need to be a little bit more plot driven than this.
Yeah, this was more character driven.
Yeah.
A lot of it was just kind of her wandering around the same two locations, just kind of
experiencing surreal nightmares, which is a lot of what the bad sequel stuff is.
Yeah, I was thinking it's like everything about the bad sequels just done to the best possible extent and like handled really well, but it wasn't quite classic Hellraiser.
Well, and it doesn't need to be. We shouldn't be judging a movie based upon that.
No,
but
I'm just saying that when I was looking at it going, how can I imagine a Hellraiser movie out of this? I just knew it'll look good, but I don't imagine it. It wasn't connecting that same kind of horror.
Yeah, I think that
this is very much its own thing.
If they bring the strengths of this movie to a more Hellraiser type plot, really grounded in the characters, but keep Hellraiser what it is, then we could have a decent movie here on our hands.
Decent is a fucking understatement.
I'm being cautious here.
I'm cautiously realistic, I know.
But this movie, I don't think it was perfect. I think that the ending got a little bit too symbolic, but I did like that the ending was a happy ending.
I was expecting it to end with her just realizing she was dead all along or something completely
I was
stupid.
expecting... Because a lot of these newer sort of artsy horror movies, really, they all, like, have the dark ending. Like, Midsummer, Hereditary, Wounds, all those sort of movies, they all have the dark, bleak ending to show, like, look at this fucking character, look at blah, 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 look at how the themes and the plot is like, yeah, but that's not fun to watch.
Anyway, yeah, good cast.
So so this is our little addendum for the
Hellraiser
week, and we're like, you know, we tended to be so negative, especially in the sequels, because they are so bad. But we do have reason to hope, because more talented filmmakers are engaging these stories than the absolute dumpster fire that were the sequels. And
like hack frauds like Scott Derrickson, that guy's career's not going anywhere.
Yeah, he's not going to direct any big movie that's going to have a pop culture impact whatsoever. And he's certainly not going to send us to any Multiverse of Madness.
Oh, brutal. Oh my god.
Watch it. I would say watch this movie.
Yeah, definitely check it out.
Check it out. It might not be like a party horror movie.
No, you want to watch something with more blood for that.
Yeah.
This didn't have any gore, actually.
Very little gore. It's very.
I can't think of any. There was like
it's the kind
just some
of
blood on a wall, and that was it.
It's the kind of horror movie that you watch by yourself or with one other person
at like 3 a.m. with the lights off.
With the lights off. But it's a good one.
That would fucking terrify you. That would be hard to sit through. Like 3 a.m. You're like sleepy and like kind of hearing things. That's like the ideal way to experience this. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
We should have watched it like that
instead of 4:30 in the afternoon on a Saturday.
Yeah. with like like an old lady couple sitting next to us, like.
With a bunch of chatty people around us.
Yeah,
and a bunch of people going beep 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 in their recliners, and a guy who tripped while walking up the stairs.
I saw that too. There's like a guy who tripped up the stairs,
breaking the tension. And some other people.
There's these two
snacks.
like soccer moms next to us who kept like making jokes, and when we saw the scene where the naked guy was standing on the water, they went, "Ooh!" Did you hear that?
No, I didn't.
They saw his butt and went, "Oh my." These like two like 50-year-old or 60-year-old moms were over there and were oh heavens, oh he is cut, he has,
I swear,
a caboose.
Their
names were like I don't know their names, but looking at them, their names were like Darla and Phyllis.
Whenever I watch like an indie movie at a big like popcorn theater, like your AMC's or your blah 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 blahs, they always have the weirdest fucking audience. Like, you have like...
It's never just like film buffs. It's just people who I guess didn't want to watch Snake Eyes again.
I didn't want to watch Snake Eyes again.
I didn't want to watch Snake Eyes. We're those people. We didn't want to watch Snake Eyes again. Fuck that.
I mean, it's either you are the only person in the entire theater, or you are surrounded by the most eclectic group of people. Okay, I think that's about it. Watch the movie in theaters if you can, in streaming if you can't. This is definitely a movie that would benefit from a nice quiet theater. What do you think?
You should stream it directly to. You should watch it the way that Martin Scorsese intends you to watch films, which is on your iPod under the covers at night when you're staying up before a school day.
Fuck you! I'm gonna watch it on my TI-83 calculator.
I'm gonna watch it on the screen on my fridge.
I'm gonna watch it on the touch screen of my laundry machine as I'm washing my clothes.
Fuck you! I'm gonna watch this movie on a printer. I'm gonna print off every frame of this movie and then like a waveform of the sound for that frame.
You're gonna staple it into like a flip
book, and then just flip it with a record player with the sounds of the movie off to the side. I'm not Owen. Oh wow, that's startling! And then like you like fuck it up and you're like, hold on, and you have to go back like 6 pages and start over. Oh wow, this is really tense scene. This is really slow. Oh man, I've wasted a lot of toner on this. God, I've been flipping pages here. My wrists are killing me. I wish she would just walk in the door already. I know we're trying to build tension.
I'm gonna watch it on my Kindle e-reader as God intended.
I'm gonna watch it.
I'm just gonna watch it.
I'm just gonna watch it.